Last year I did a video about the Sony α7 R5 being a low light monster. Now of course it's not a low light monster, but what I was referring to was the combination of modern sensors with AI denoising. Today we're going to look at two of the best AI denoising products on the market, and we're going to compare them using some of the images I took with the Sony α7 R5, but also some high ISO images that I took back in 2007 on a Nikon DXO. Let's get into it. So the premise of the video I was referring to in the introduction is about the combination of a modern sensor with modern AI denoising tools, making any camera a low light monster. Now the fact is that AI denoising is absolutely incredible, and there are several products on the market at the moment that are really stand out good at this sort of stuff. Today we're going to look at two. We're going to look at Lightroom's Denoise, which I've used extensively and I used in that video on the Sony α7 R5, and I left a link for that in the description. And we're going to compare it to DXO PureRaw. Now if you've been following my videos recently, you will know that I am working with DXO to look at their products, and I'm going on my own personal journey with their products. In two of the last previous videos I've been looking at their PhotoLab 9 and I've been very impressed with it. But today we're going to look solely at the noise reduction capabilities of their PureRaw app. Now their PureRaw app is basically the equivalent of Adobe Camera Raw. We're going to compare its AI denoising capability with that of Lightroom using two images, as I've said, one from the Sony α7 R5 and one from the Nikon DXO from many years ago. We're going to denoise them in Lightroom and denoise them in PureRaw, output them as DNGs, and then bring them back into Lightroom where we can easily compare them side by side just to see how well each of them has done. One of the questions I'm asking today is noise important anymore? We still have high megapixel sensors such as my Sony that do produce quite a lot of noise at high ISOs. There are other cameras with lower megapixel counts that are absolutely incredible in low light, high ISO situations. But there are a lot of high megapixel cameras that do produce a lot of noise. But does it matter? Today's modern AI denoising software is absolutely superb. So is noise something we particularly need to worry about? We're going to have a look at that with these two products today. If you're interested in getting any of the DXO products, they've kindly given me a 15% discount code, and I've left that in the description below. You can click on the links and that will take you through to their site. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's have a look at these images and see what we can produce out of them using these denoise tools. So these are the two images that we have. This is the Nikon D2X, and it was taken in, I believe, 2007, and it was taken at 1100 ISO. And if we click in, you can see just how grainy older cameras were. This is at 100%, and that is very grainy. Let's go over to the Sony α7 R5, and you might recognize images like this from my previous video. This was shot at 12,800 ISO. Fitting to the screen, it looks absolutely fine. However, if we crop into 100%, bearing in mind this is a 61 megapixel sensor, you can see that's pretty noisy. Now, if we put them side by side just for the moment and compare them, you can see in terms of grain, they're actually pretty similar. So you're looking at the best part of 14 years of sensor development, allowing us to go to 12,800 from 1,100 ISO. So the increase in sensor technology is quite impressive, and bear in mind that this is a 61 megapixel sensor versus a 12 megapixel sensor. There is quite a similarity, but quite a striking difference in technology and how the technology has moved on. So let's go back to the full screen and let's pick the Bangkok picture with the Sony α7 R5 first. And we're not going to do any corrections on it. We're just simply going to do a denoise because I want it to be a straight denoise of a straight raw image from both of these softwares. So we'll go over to the develop module and we'll scroll down to the denoise and we'll simply click that. and we'll wait for Lightroom to do its stuff. Now it's estimating 45 seconds. It'll be interesting to see if PureRaw is actually any quicker than that. I'm not going to do accurate timings. We can see roughly how quick these softwares are. And there, that's done. And now I'm not going to actually do any adjustments to the denoising. We're going to just see what they're like straight out of the box. Let's go in, and you can see that is quite a dramatic difference there. There's still a little bit of noise, but it was an extraordinarily noisy image. But the noise now is more like a film-like grain rather than real nasty sensor noise. If I just click denoise off for a second, you can see the difference there. So let's go back and we'll do the Hong Kong picture with the DX2. As you can see, very, very grainy. If I zoom into 100%, it doesn't zoom in anywhere near as far because it's a 12 megapixel sensor. And let's just click on the denoise for that one. That's only going to take 9 seconds because it's a much smaller file size. And there we go. And again, that looks really, really impressive. Your ship here is actually moving. You can see a little bit of motion blur there, but very, very impressive. You can see again some noise in the sky, but I'm not going to try and mask that out. We're just going to keep it as is. But if we click on and click off, we can see that's quite an impressive looking image. So let's go over and have a look at these images in DXO PureRaw, and we'll open up PureRaw, and when you open it up, this is what it looks like. It's quite a simple interface. You simply add your RAWs, you can drag and drop them, or you can click on it and add them. So we'll take these two RAWs from here, we've got them in a separate folder, and we'll add them. And now we can see the images up here, and if we double click on them, we can see them full screen. Now, if I zoom into 100%, you can see we've got that same grain as we did in the Lightroom version. But if I right click on it, I can click on Process Files, and this will pop up various options. Much of DXO PureRaw's processing is automatic, but you can choose up here between different settings. But these are for the Hasselblad, the XD2S, and for the X-Trans sensors. So we keep our algorithm on Deep Prime 3. And what we'll do is we will process it now. And that's the processing done. And we will view the results. So what it does is it pops up this overlay. And both images have been processed here at the same time because it batch processes stuff. Let's first have a look at the Sony file, and we'll go to 100%, and you've got this very handy little slider here. And as you can see, there's a real big improvement in the reduction of the noise, particularly if we slide it over here. You can see that number plate on the front of the tuk-tuk there, and we slide across there, and whilst getting rid of the noise, it's done an impressive job in keeping the detail in the lettering and numbering here. That's very, very impressive indeed. Let's have a look at the Nikon file and let that process. Let's come down to the ship. And again, you can see that's done a very, very good job. You slide along here and you can see that there's a lot of lumen noise in the image at 1100 ISO, and DXO PureRaw has taken that away pretty impressively. During the processing, what PureRaw has done is it's exported it to the original file as a DNG file, so we can now import those into Lightroom and have a look at them. And there we have them. And we can see the file names down here. So this is the PureRaw version. So for simplicity's sake, we will make the PureRaw versions a color label of red. So that's a red one, PureRaw one, and we'll make that color rating red. And we'll do green for the Lightroom versions. So let's have a look at these two side by side. This is the D2X, the 1100 ISO 14-year-old file, and we'll compare them side by side. And on the left, we have the Deep Prime version. On the right, we have the Lightroom version. And if we zoom in at 100% on both, you can see, let's get the images matching here. You can see they're very, very close. It's very difficult to pick out a winner between these two. I would say that the Lightroom version looks a little over sharpened compared to the DXO PureRaw. The noise reduction is very, very similar. Let's just take them up to 200% for the sake of argument. And again, very, very similar. I think that the sharpening is better on the pure raw version. The Lightroom one seems to break apart a little bit more. And if you look at the noise up here, it just seems better controlled in the DXO PureRaw version than it does compared to the Lightroom version. So on the older file, I'm giving the win there to DXO PureRaw. So let's do the same for the versions of the Sony Alpha 7R5. In this case, again, on the left we have the DXO version, and on the right we have the Lightroom version. And we'll zoom into 100% on both of them. Now there's very slight processing differences here between the two of them. That's just Adobe color and DXO's color systems working slightly differently, but the exposure is exactly the same. Again, I'm looking at the noise up here, particularly in these shadow areas of this white here, and I would say Lightroom has significantly more noise in it than the DXO PureRaw version. I would say that, again, in terms of sharpness, I would say that Lightroom is probably very slightly sharper, but the noise is slightly more prominent. In either case, I think both of them are very, very similar in capability. Let's again go to 200%, and bearing in mind this is a 61 megapixel file at 12,800. I think aesthetically the DXO PureRaw reduction of noise is pleasing, more pleasing than the Lightroom version. The DXO version, if I use that old trope about film look, I think it looks more like a film grain than the noise reduction in Lightroom. So again, I'm giving that win to PureRaw. So that's been a quite interesting comparison. And I think it's been quite important to look at older images as well, because sensors from 10, 15 years ago just could not handle noise as well as modern sensors. And if you combine those older images with the modern AI denoising tools, you can breathe new life into those very old images that perhaps you wouldn't have even considered before. In terms of quality, I think both DXO PureRaw and Lightroom are very, very close. In both cases, I'm giving it slightly, just very slightly, to PureRaw. But you do have to add in the fact that PureRaw is an extra process in your workflow. You have to process your raw images into DNG and then either import them into Lightroom or into Photolab 9, whatever editing software you're using. So there is that extra step. However, if you're batch processing a whole load of very similar images, perhaps from sports photography or wildlife or something like that, that PureRaw step will be relatively minimal. And I will say that I think the processing of the PureRaw was significantly faster, particularly in the Sony version, than Lightroom. It seemed to do both of those images perhaps quicker than Lightroom did that 161 megapixel file. So don't forget, I do have a 15% discount code on DXO products. I've left that link down in the description below. Do you have any thoughts on noise reduction? Are we at a stage now where noise is relatively insignificant to the quality of our images? With AI denoise tools, we are able to produce some fantastic images even at the most high ISO levels. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on that. And if you've enjoyed this video, a like would be fantastic, a subscription would be even better, and I will see you outside hopefully for the next one. The last few days, weeks have been quite grey and overcast with a bit of rain, so I haven't gone out and done much photography, but I've got 2 lined up that should be outside, so join me for those in the next couple of weeks. I'll see you in the next ones.